Hi, my name is Lupe, and I am about to read to you a nonfiction Bantam book called The Adult Children of Alcoholics Syndrome, From Discovery to Recovery by Wayne Kritsberg. Thank you, Mr. Kritsberg. Who am I to read this book to you? Well, let's start with who I'm not. I did not write this book, nor do I own the copyright, and I am not an audio engineer. I am a human being, not a robot, obviously, who is an ACA, adult child of an alcoholic. The type 3 kind, to be exactish. Is that a word? This is purely an act of service and love to all of you who grew up like me in some sort of household that was affected by addiction. I read this book a while back, and it gave me so much clarity and peace that I thought I'd share it with you. May you receive that and so much more. You're brilliant, and I love you. So let's get started. This is a nonfiction Bantam book. Lupe presents The Adult Children of Alcoholics Syndrome, From Discovery to Recovery by Wayne Kritsberg. This book is dedicated to Marcella, my mother, and Arlene, my sister. One day at a time. Adult children of alcoholics can and do recover. Thousands of ACAs are in the recovery process right now, and thousands more will be joining that process as more and more information about alcoholism and its effects on the family becomes available to the public. It must be remembered, however, that recovery is a process, not an event. Recovery is a way of living, a quality of feeling, and a mental attitude. Every ACA who reads this has begun the recovery process. If you had not started this process, you would not be reading this. The recovery process for ACAs begins with the realization, or sometimes just the suspicion, that their lives are not progressing in a way that is healthy. Just the knowing that something is amiss is enough for the recovery process to start. Acknowledgements. There were so many people who were a part of the production of this book that it would be impossible to name them all. A special thanks must go out to the adult children of alcoholics, ACAs, who have allowed me the privilege of being part of their lives. For the past few years, I have facilitated 4 ongoing therapy groups for ACAs. It was mainly from the people in these groups that I got the written material to use as examples of work that ACAs had done. The trust and openness of these people has transformed this book from a dream into a reality. A special thanks must also go to my friends, both personal and professional, who continued to encourage and support me during the writing of this manuscript. I would specifically like to thank Carl Kirsch, MD, of Austin, Texas, for his assistance in preparing the section on chronic shock. Lastly, many thanks and appreciation go to Lee McNeil, who spent many hours and late nights proofreading and helping with the rewriting of the final draft of the manuscript. The examples used in this book are based upon actual case histories of ACAs who are in the process of recovering from the effects of growing up in an alcoholic family. The examples used in this book are based upon actual case histories of ACAs who are in the process of recovering from the effects of growing up in an alcoholic family. In order to ensure privacy and confidentiality, I have either changed the names of the persons in the example or, in some cases, used composites of several different people. Introduction. The purpose of this book is twofold. First, to provide the reader with information about the adult children of alcoholics syndrome. Second, to provide a solution and a method for ACAs to begin the recovery process. To this end, the book has been divided into 2 primary components, Part 1, Discovery, and Part 2, Recovery. Part 1, Discovery, focuses on the causes and consequences of the adult children of alcoholics syndrome. This section gives facts about the alcoholic family and what happens to children who are raised in this environment. It is vital that ACAs have this information. This explains why ACAs act and feel, or do not feel, as they do. It is very important that ACAs understand that being raised in an alcoholic family has greatly influenced their behavior and feelings as adults. Being raised in an alcoholic family does make a difference, and this important piece of information has been overlooked for quite some time. It is also vital that therapists and other health professionals have information about ACAs. For years, ACAs have been misdiagnosed, misunderstood, and treated incorrectly in the professional community. This, I'm happy to say, is rapidly changing. Part 2, Recovery, focuses on the recovery process. ACAs can and do recover from the effects of being raised in an alcoholic family. Thousands are already well into recovery and leading much healthier and happier lives than they had ever dreamed possible. In this section, I have presented an overview of treatment options for the ACA and a system of recovery called the Family Integration System. The Family Integration System, FIS, is a system that I designed over a period of years that assists the ACA in coming to terms with growing up in an alcoholic family. The system gives the ACA a way to let go of the anger, hurt, and fear that every untreated ACA carries buried deep inside. ACAs number in the millions and are recovering in the thousands. Hopefully, in the near future, each person who has been raised in an alcoholic family will have the necessary information and opportunity to recover from the effects of the adult children of alcoholic syndrome. It is to contribute to this end that I have written this book. Table of Contents. Introduction. Part 1, Discovery. Chapter 1, The 4 Major Types of Alcoholic Families. Chapter 2, The 4 Rules of the Alcoholic Family. Chapter 3, Family Roles. Chapter 4, The Alcoholic Family and the Healthy Family. Chapter 5, Abandonment. Chapter 6, Characteristics of ACAs. Chapter 7, Chronic Shock. Part 2, Recovery, the Family Integration System. Chapter 8, Recovery, a Process. Chapter 9, Introduction and Setup. Chapter 10, The Daily Log. Chapter 11, The Family Tree. Chapter 12, The Family Group Information Sheet. Chapter 13, Family Myths. Chapter 14, The Personal History Section. Chapter 15, The Magical Child. Chapter 16, Family Members. Chapter 17, Influential Persons. Chapter 18, Affirmations. Chapter 19, Spiritual Reflections. Chapter 20, Integration. Chapter 21, Conclusions, Resources. Chapter 1, The 4 Major Types of Alcoholic Families. People who grow up in alcoholic families have common symptoms and behaviors as a result of their common experience. It is these shared symptoms and behaviors that set adult children of alcoholics, ACAs, apart from other people. ACAs are different from people who were raised in other types of family systems. They view the world in a way that is unique. The common symptoms that characterize this group of people is the adult children of alcoholic syndrome. To understand the adult children of alcoholic syndrome, it is necessary to have a knowledge of the alcoholic family. It is the alcoholic family system that causes the adult child syndrome. When children are born into this system, they are delivered into a unit that, from the beginning, inhibits their development as healthy human beings. It is of vital importance that we acknowledge, from the beginning, that the symptoms and behaviors of adult children of alcoholics are directly related to the experience of being raised in an unsafe, dysfunctional, alcoholic family system. Some of the questions about the alcoholic family system that will be answered in the next few chapters are: what is an alcoholic family system? Are there different kinds of alcoholic family systems? Are some families more alcoholic than others? Are there general rules in an alcoholic family? Are there general roles in the alcoholic family? How does the alcoholic family compare with healthy families? Put simply, the alcoholic family is a family in which the disease of alcoholism has affected the way the family system operates. The influence of the disease, and alcoholism is a disease, invades all aspects of family life, and the family operates in a way that is basically unhealthy. The difference between the alcoholic family system and a healthy system is that the alcoholic family system operates in a way that limits and controls the actions and emotions of individual members. The healthy family operates to allow the individual freedom of expression and freedom to grow. There are 4 major types of alcoholic family systems. The following is a description of each type of system and a diagram of that family system. Type 1. This system is riddled with active alcoholism in children, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and even further back in the family history. Active alcoholism is rampant. Every generation of this family will have both active alcoholism and adult children of alcoholics' issues to deal with. Jane's family, see diagram below, is a typical type 1 alcoholic family system. There is active alcoholism in every generation. Her family is completely organized around drinking and those activities that can be done while drinking. When Jane came into therapy, she had been sober for almost 2 years, but having a very difficult time adjusting to a sober lifestyle. One of her comments was, "I thought all families drank like ours did. We never associated with other families or other people who were not involved in heavy drinking. Getting drunk was normal. All my uncles, aunts, and cousins drank a lot and got drunk. No one in the family thought it odd when I began to drink and get drunk at 14. It was sort of expected." Not only did Jane have a whole range of ACA issues to deal with, she also needed to learn how to live in a sober family. Jane's daughter, Mary, who was no longer living at home, was already recovering from alcoholism when Jane sought treatment for alcoholism. Jane's husband, Bill, was not an alcoholic, but, as can be seen from the diagram, he also came from an alcoholic family. Paul, age 9, was still living at home with Jane and Bill. For the type 1 alcoholic family, crisis has become a lifestyle, a cycle which is difficult to break. In Jane's case, it took concerted effort on her part and on the part of her husband and children to refocus the family into a non-drinking lifestyle. This was accomplished. Jane found, however, that to maintain a healthy atmosphere, she had to limit the time she and her family spent with the rest of the actively drinking family members. Using the diagram on page 5, it is easy to trace the disease of alcoholism through Jane's type 1 family. Type 2. In this alcoholic family system, the actively drinking member of the nuclear family has stopped drinking. Although the active alcoholism has been arrested, the family system will continue to operate in a way that can only be described as alcoholic. It is important to note that even when the alcohol is removed from the system, if the family remains untreated, the alcoholic behavior will continue to operate. Many ACAs who come from this type of system feel a great deal of conflict. Ted, depicted in the diagram below, came from the type 2 alcoholic family system. Ted was 11 years old when his father stopped drinking and was 25 years old when he entered therapy for his ACA issues. He felt a great deal of conflict when he talked about his father's drinking. On the one hand, he was grateful and happy that his father stopped drinking. On the other hand, he felt angry at him. One night, Ted told his group, "I feel guilty when I say that I'm angry at my father. I really am glad that he stopped drinking, and things really did get better at home when he stopped. But I still feel angry over all those years of drinking. Not only that, but after he stopped, he never did try to spend time with me. He was always going to AA meetings or working. He never had time for me. And I'm angry at that too. I know I'm angry, but I still feel guilty. Almost like I'm betraying him by talking about my anger at him. Ted had unresolved anger at his father's behavior both before and after the drinking stopped. Like many ACAs and Type 2 families, Ted believed he should accept, without reservation and with gratitude, his father's newfound sobriety. Ted needed treatment to learn that he had the right, the ability, and the real need to express the powerful feelings of anger, hurt, fear, and rejection he had about his father's physical abuse during the drinking days, and not getting the attention he needed and deserved from his father, even in sobriety. After Ted had been in the ACA group a while, he told his father that he was working on dealing with what had happened to him when he was a child. His father's comment was, "Why don't you just forget what happened and go on with your life? I have." Neither Ted's mother nor his sister wanted to talk about what it was like when John, the father, was drinking. The untreated family, still acting out of fear and denial, had continued to operate alcoholically 14 years after John, the alcoholic, had stopped drinking. Ted's story is repeated over and over by people who come from Type 2 families. On page 8 is a diagram of Ted's Type 2 system. Type 3. In the Type 3 system, the act of drinking has been removed from the family for one or more generations. In this system, the parents did not drink in an alcoholic way, but one of their parents, or even grandparents, was an alcoholic. Even though active drinking has not been in the family for some time, the family dynamics continue in a way that is still characteristic of an alcoholic family. Many ACAs come from this type of family. Their parents did not abuse alcohol, but one or more of their grandparents did, and their family continues to follow the rules and behaviors of an actively drinking alcoholic family. It is extremely important for people who come from this type of system to realize that the behavioral characteristics of the disease of alcoholism are transmitted through the family, even though the act of drinking has ceased. Many times this hidden alcoholism factor will only come to light after a thorough family history has been completed. Often people from a Type 3 family will not understand why they feel so at home with ACAs, or why they are so personally familiar with the characteristics of ACAs. When they discover that alcoholism has impacted their lives from generations, they often have a sense of relief. Kim had a very difficult time trusting anyone. She felt full of fear. She did not even know what she was afraid of. She just felt afraid all of the time. When she got into relationships, she would become overwhelmed with fear. She would never tell her lover what she was feeling because she was afraid her lover would leave, or worse, pity her. One night, a friend of Kim's took her to an ACA's meeting. Kim felt at home for the first time in her life, but she also felt a little guilty because neither one of her parents drank. Kim continued to go to ACA meetings, however, because almost every time someone spoke in that meeting, I felt like they were telling my story. It felt like they knew exactly what I was feeling and that they knew how I felt when I was a child. Kim asked me if she could be in one of my ACA's therapy groups, even though her parents did not drink. When I asked her why she wanted to, she replied, "I know that my parents did not drink, but when my friends, who are all ACAs, talk about their families, I feel like they're talking about my family. My family acted just like an alcoholic family." When Kim and I went over her family tree, see Chapter 11, it was discovered that her parental grandfather was an alcoholic. I explained to Kim about the alcoholic family rules, see Chapter 2, and that even though her father did not drink, he was raised in an alcoholic family and learned their rules. Kim's father had used the same system in raising his own children. No wonder Kim felt so at home at ACA's meetings. She followed the same alcoholic family rules as her friends. Although she didn't know it, Kim came from an alcoholic family. She was only one generation removed from the act of drinking. Kim's story is not unusual. Many ACAs come from an alcoholic family in which the act of drinking has skipped one or sometimes more generations. The diagram on page 10 shows Kim's type 3 alcoholic family. Type 4. In this non-alcoholic family, one of its members becomes an alcoholic. The family then becomes an alcoholic family system. The children of this family will have ACA issues and will be at high risk for becoming alcoholic themselves. As the disease of alcoholism progresses in the alcoholic family member, the family becomes more and more dysfunctional in its attempts to deal with the alcoholic's behavior. There are many kinds of non-alcoholic dysfunctional families. First-generation alcoholics often come from dysfunctional families. When I first saw Carol as a client, she had been sober for 2 years. No one in her family ever drank. She had checked her family history as far back as her great-grandparents on both sides, and nowhere was there even a hint of alcoholism. It was clear, however, that Carol's drinking had been out of control. Although she did not drink on a daily basis, when she did drink, she lost control, got drunk, had blackouts, and did things that she normally would not do. She could not predict her behavior when she drank. She also hid her supply of alcohol, in her case, wine, and hid her empty bottles. When she finally cleaned out her garage and saw how many empty wine bottles there were, Carol became convinced of her alcoholism. Even though there was no alcoholism present, Carol's family was dysfunctional. There was never any real communication of feelings in her family. As she put it, "I grew up in an emotional vacuum. My family never showed emotion to one another, especially love or affection. I never remember my dad hugging me as a kid." Carol also reported that there were often angry and sometimes violent outbursts by her father, and she lived in fear of these incidents. Her family clearly did not demonstrate good health. Carol's 2 children, who were teenagers when she got sober, definitely came from a first-generation alcoholic family and would have ACA issues to deal with. The diagram on page 12 shows Carol's type 4 alcoholic family. When looking at the 4 major types of alcoholic families, it is important to consider 2 things. First, the effects of alcoholism on the family occur even when the act of drinking is not present. Second, the alcoholic system will recreate itself generation after generation if the family is not treated. These points are important. A great number of ACAs come from families where there is no alcoholic drinking taking place. If alcoholism is in their family history, they will have ACA issues. Although there are 4 general types of alcoholic family systems, there is no typical alcoholic family. Each family is unique. Within the 4 general types of alcoholic families, there is a wide variation of family dysfunction. It is safe to state that every alcoholic family is an unhealthy family, but there are degrees of dysfunction within different families. The degree of family dysfunction has a direct effect on the amount of emotional and physical damage that is done to the children. The more dysfunctional the family, the greater the damage to the child. At one extreme of the continuum of functional/dysfunctional family systems is the extremely violent system, in which physical violence occurs on a regular basis among the family members. In this system, the death of a child from physical abuse can, and sometimes does, occur. Children surviving this system often have severe emotional trauma that deeply affects their adult lives. It is important to remember that in the violent system, it is not only the alcoholic who commits acts of violence in the family. The other adults in the family are often violent to each other and to the children. Siblings often physically take out their anger and frustration on weaker and younger brothers and sisters. Sibling abuse can be as terrifying and as damaging to a child as parental physical abuse. At the same end of the continuum of functional/dysfunctional family systems can be the family in which there is no physical violence or even any shouting or displays of anger. This family may look like a family that is functioning at a healthy level, but within the family, the alcoholic behaviors of the members create a system that is extremely stressful on its members. Children in this system often live in quiet terror and abandonment. No one in the family actually physically hurts them, but the threat of harm is a constant presence. Emotional damage to the children in a non-physically violent system can be as harmful to these children as physical violence is for the children living in a violent system. Also, at the same end of the functional/dysfunctional continuum is the sexually abusing alcoholic family. Sexual abuse is as damaging to the child as in either of the above situations. It is important to recognize that sexual abuse is common in alcoholic families. Sexual abuse can range from continuing sexual intercourse over a long period of time to single sexual incidents, such as fondling. It must also be recognized that sexual abuse includes non-physical abuse. Inappropriate sexual comments and sexual teasing on the part of the adult often have a traumatic emotional impact on both male and female children. The following is the family system continuum chart. The continuum ranges from -10 to +10. The severely dysfunctional families are grouped at the -10 end of the scale, and the highly functional families are grouped at the +10 end of the scale. Looking at the above continuum, we can state several things about alcoholic families. 1. The alcoholic family will always fall between 0 and -10 on this continuum because it is always a dysfunctional family. It differs from other alcoholic families only in degree of dysfunction. 2. There is always emotional abuse in alcoholic families. Physical and sexual abuse are common in these families, and each can be equally damaging to the child. Depending on the severity of the abuse, the family rating will be toward the lower end, -10, of the continuum. The more severe the family dysfunction, the greater the emotional damage to the children. Many alcoholic families combine emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. The family system continuum will be used again to compare in more detail healthy and unhealthy families.